Hey there, if you watched my last video, that was just on solving equations with variables on one side. In this video, we're going to expand upon that and have equations with variables on both sides. So we'll have a letter on both sides of our equal sign. All of our steps are exactly the same. The only difference is we're going to add in one or two in our solving. So if you want to pause the video, write these down for future reference, I would strongly suggest it. If you think you have them down, well then just keep on moving. In our first problem, we are going to look at the distributive property. If you don't remember what that is from our last video, it's just when you take the number that is right outside of the parentheses and you multiply everything inside of the parentheses by that number. So in this case, we have 3 and we are multiplying it by x and positive 6. So 3 times x is 3x, 6 times 3 is positive 18. We're going to do that on the right side of the equation as well. So remember, if there's no number between the negative sign and the parentheses, it just means -1. And we're going to distribute that to everything on the inside. So -1 times 2x is -2x. -1 times -13 is positive 13. Remember that we want to keep track of the symbols in front of our numbers because that's telling us whether we're adding or subtracting. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and that's why it's plus 13. Moving on from here, before we were left with just 2 steps to solve, now we have to get all of our variables on one side of the equation, all of our constants on the other. So anything that's attached to a letter needs to be on one side, and anything without a letter is on the other. What I suggest doing is moving the smaller variables. So if we have 3x and we have -2x, -2 is smaller. So I'm going to add 2x to get rid of it. Now what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to add 2x on the other side as well. 3x plus 2x is 5x. And everything that we haven't touched drops down. So this positive 18 is going to drop down. And this positive 13 is going to drop down. And I'm not going to write a positive sign because we don't really need to. Now it looks just like the equations from the last video. So my next step is to move the constant that's on the same side as the variable. So that constant would be positive 18. The opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract that on both sides. It'll go away on the left, and I'm left with just 5x. And on the right, 13 minus 18 is -5. And then my last step is just to divide. So I'm going to divide by my coefficient of 5, and that leaves me with an answer of x is equal to -1. And then I'm done. If you want to check your work, you can plug that back in, and what you get on the left-hand side of the equation should be equal to what you get on the right. In our next problem, we're going to combine like terms. Remember, when you combine like terms, you can only combine them if they are on the same side of the equal sign. So on my left, I have 6x and -3x. I can put those together. 6 minus 3 is 3. And then positive 4 just drops down. There's nothing to combine it with. On the right side of my equation, I can combine -5 and positive 1. -5 plus 1 is -4. And then my 7x, I have nothing to combine it with. It just drops down. From here, I can now move my smaller variables. So remember, my variable is what has an x. So if I have 3x and I have 7x, 3 is smaller than 7. That's what I need to move. So I subtract it on both sides. When I subtract it, it goes away on the left, and I'm left with just 4. And on the right, I drop down my -4, and then 7 minus 3 is 4x. And now I have a variable on one side. I want to move my constant to the other. So I have -4 plus 4x. I don't want those things together. So I'm going to get rid of the -4 by adding 4, and it'll go away. If I do it to one side, I also have to do it on the other. And 8 is equal to 4x. And my last step is simply to divide by my coefficient of 4. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. That is my answer. Now let's put all of that together. When we put that together, we are going to first look, remember in your steps, you get rid of the big ugly fraction, and there is none on this problem, and then we look at the distributive property. So our distributive property says that we're going to have to multiply 4 times x and 4 times 6. 4 times x is positive 4x. 4 times 6 is positive 24. and everything else simply drops down. And now I can combine my like terms. So I have 2x and 4x, which makes 6x. Jumped the gun on that one. Which is equal to negative 2x. Brain is going faster than my hand. Negative 2x, there we go. And now this one looks a little different from the others because we only have a constant on one side. That constant is our positive 24. And since our goal is to get all of our variables on one side and all of our constants on the other, because we already have a constant on just one side, I'm going to suggest getting rid of the 6x instead of the negative 2x, even though negative 2x is smaller. So I'm just going to subtract that on both sides. And I'm left with 24 is equal to negative 8x. And then my last step is to divide by my coefficient. Now my coefficient isn't 8, it's negative 8. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8, and x is equal to negative 3. Now, when I was at this step right here, what I could have done, and I'm going to do it off to the side so that you see that it's the same, is if I had 6x plus 24 is equal to negative 2x, and I wanted to move my smaller variable, I could have added 2x to both sides, and I would have ended up with 8x plus 24 is equal to 0, because negative 2x plus 2x is 0. And then I would move my constant to the other side, so I'd subtract it, and then I have 8x is equal to negative 24, divide both sides by 8, and x is equal to negative 3. So I still would have gotten the same answer, it just was a couple extra steps, but it's up to you which one you want to do. And then lastly, just like before, I'm going to go to my fractions because I know how much all of us love them. So when I'm doing my fractions, if I don't have a big ugly fraction, I just want to distribute. It's easier. And a lot of times it becomes a whole number. So 1/3 times 6x is going to be 2x. And then 1/3 times negative 27 is negative 9. And now I'm left with a problem just like all of my others. So my first step is to move my smaller variable. X is smaller than 2x, so I'm going to get rid of it. 2x minus x is x. Everything else drops down. Then my last step is just going to be to add 9 to both sides because I want all my constants on the opposite side, and x is equal to 14. So in this case, I didn't even have to divide because my coefficient was 1. That's all you have to do for any of these problems. I would suggest finding some practice to do so that you can make sure that you're comfortable with this. And then from there, just go forth and prosper.